Welcome back to Soul Knowledge, the home of the sneaker story and the home of sports culture insights. I'm your host, Bernie Wicomb, and I am the sneaker evangelist. This is a new location, Das ist Berlin. This is Berlin. And after my arrival in the city, I wanted to make sure that I understood sneaker culture well enough, that I got to understand what the average Berliner is wearing on their feet. And after a couple of months of just looking at the streets, I can conclude that the styling of the city, the sweetheart of styling, is that of low-profile court sneakers. And I wanted to find a way of sharing the story based on the local love for sneakers. And wouldn't you know it, Maison Margiela and Reebok speaks about a very premium version of the Club C, which is just about to go to market. And I thought that would be an appropriate story to tell. But I think that story on its own needs a bit of context because Maison Margiela and Reebok have been doing quite a lot of work preceding this very launch. And I think it's helpful to contextualize that it actually started in their summer-spring collection of 2020, where they looked at the Instapump and a boot variation. And what they did was use the 1988 show for Maison Margiela, which showed the tubby toe or the split toe. This inspired by the Japanese split toe. And you can see that this Instapump boot actually does have a split toe in the upper, which speaks directly to that tubby understanding. And then obviously the Instapump. The next version that they went to market with, also calling out the tubby toe, was a black and white version of the Reebok Classic. I mean, a classic shoe within itself. What they then did was, in the third phase of this relationship, Margiela then introduces a styling of almost like a hand-painted paintwork on the Reebok Classic called Bianchetto. And this shows almost a rough hand-painted variation, but as you walk in the shoe, it begins to intentionally show stress and crack and wear. So as the shoe walks, it ages beautifully. And it got me thinking, what is the next thing that the brands are going to do? And over here, the Club C introduces something new up the sleeve for Maison Margiela in the way they land certain propositions. And it is this new proposition that I want to spend a little bit more time sharing with you, unpacking, because I believe it's so typically Margiela that it will make you think, what's going to happen after this? Because this relationship has delivered so many relevant beats for both of the brands. Let's go check it out. Now when getting into the meat and potatoes part of this collaboration, I want to delve into the Club C. The product is important, but also the boxing that it comes in, because it does speak a lot about the Maison Margiela brand. It's important that we understand that this is a brand that is focused on being rather minimalistic in its design aesthetic. Typically, its labeling would only show one singular label which has been stitched at all four corners, as you can see in this image over here. This is typically what the label looks like. But on the outside, there's not too much about that look that reveals the brand itself. And typically, it's not surprising that Kanye West delivers a line when he's in Paris and he says, "What's that jacket, Margiela?" And that's an appropriate ask because that is typically how the brand works. Either you get a sense that you're wearing Margiela and you can see it in the clothing itself, but it is that minimalistic feel that has been brought through in the box. Have a look at this, beautifully glossed out with an ivory colorway, and also just the branding itself and how it lands. I want to also just draw your attention to the importance of this branding because Maison Margiela uses a range of numbers to sort of identify the brand categories. So numbered 0 through to 23, each number stands for something within itself. So with the woman's wardrobe, it would be number 4. With the accessories for men's and women, it's typically number 11. I think the men's collection is a number 14. But in this case, with men's and women's footwear, you can see it is the number 22 that has been highlighted within this over here. Now I want to just take a bit closer for you to understand how the product actually unfolds. Okay, so let's get into it. Now, these shoe covers, you actually get a set of shoe covers with them, and unsurprisingly, they are unbranded in that minimalistic approach, as I've just mentioned. And yes, Here we have the Club C. So just so that you understand, for context, Club C, the C stands for championship. So it's the Club Championship. The shoe came out in 1985 as a performance tennis shoe, but it has beautifully managed to transition itself between sports performance and sports lifestyle today. And where you see the Margiela inspiration come through in the design is an application done on the upper referred to as Trompe. Trompe is a means of deceiving the eye into making it think it's seeing something that it actually is not. And in this case, the upper, the detailing of this upper is actually one full piece of construction that has been printed on it. It is a 2D print trying to deceive you into seeing a 3D image. Now, all of this stitching is a print. All of this perforation is a print. All of this detailing, it's just an illusion, and it is typically Margiela, typically Trompe. These are two examples that you see in the apparel line. The first one that I want to show you is a nude waistcoat. But this waistcoat has actually had the Trompe application onto it, but what you are actually seeing is a biker leather jacket that has been applied onto it. A second and also helpful example is this version of a cotton t-shirt that you could see, but this cotton t-shirt has got a trench coat printed onto it. Note the shadows, note the depth into it. It's also just a 2D version of a 3D image, which is typically what Margiela has done over here. If you have a look at the tongue detail, it is the labeling, and as you can see, it is so subtle. I mean, you can't see that number 22 highlighted. But here's the clincher. At the back, can you see the stitching detailing? This is the stitching detail which mirrors the back of the labels that you see in Maison Margiela's clothing, just at the back over there. So minimalistic. It's a detail that could just be lost on most, but something that definitely is worth unpacking and unpeeling. So what a beauty. One thing that I did find interesting after putting on the shoe is that it almost kind of like the idea that I've shared with you earlier on about the bianchetto, is that it begins to show signs of stress and wear and purposefully fragmenting itself on the upper, showing signs of fatigue in the look. And what this means is that you and I can experience a journey of seeing an accelerated change in what the shoe actually looks like. And I really hope to come across a few more people who have this to see what those changes looks like on their shoe versus mine. And I think that's an evolution we can all look forward to.